It's late on a Sunday night. You're not in crisis. Nothing collapsed. But you're lying there doing the same math you did last week: mortgage, car, note, insurance, groceries, running numbers in your head. Like if you calculate it one more time, the answer changes. It never changes. And somewhere on your street, someone who makes roughly what you make just took the whole week off. No emergency, no drama. He just didn't feel like going in, and he didn't. Now, maybe he has savings you don't know about. Maybe his wife earns more. Maybe he went freelance years ago. But that kind of freedom usually comes from one place: lower fixed obligations. The people who can walk away from a week of work without panic are almost always the people whose monthly survival costs less. Today, we're talking about what actually happens to your money, your career, and your entire life the day you make that final mortgage payment. And I promise by the end of this, you're going to see that math problem differently. Let's start with the numbers because they're more brutal than most people sit with. The median American household takes home roughly $5,400 a month after taxes. The median mortgage payment on a recently originated loan runs somewhere around $2,600 to $2,800. For recent buyers specifically, the ratio can get dangerously close to half of take-home pay just for the house. Not the car, not food, just the house. The threshold most financial professionals consider the danger zone is 30%. Many recent buyers are walking around 15 to 20 points over that limit every single month, and they're doing it for 30 years. Let's make this real. Take a household, two incomes combined $110,000 a year. After taxes and a modest retirement contribution, they're clearing about $6,800 a month. Now watch it disappear. Mortgage on a $385,000 home, $2,400. Property taxes, $380. Insurance, $200. Maintenance reserve, $320. That's $3,300 just to legally occupy the building. They've got $3,500 left. 2 car payments, $800. Insurance, $240. Gas, because nothing near them is walkable, $280. Student loans, $550. Health insurance premiums employer covers most, but not all, $360. Groceries, $700. Utilities and phones, $420. That leaves $150. Now this isn't every household, but it is a very recognizable version of modern middle-class pressure. No boat, no vacation home. 2 people who followed the standard playbook. And every career move, every side hustle idea, every conversation about what they actually want from life, filtered through one silent question running in the background. Can we still cover the mortgage? That question shapes more of your life than you realize. And here's what I want you to sit with: what happens to every decision they make the day that question disappears. I need to be honest with you for a second. I've been in that math. A few years back, one of us was between jobs, the other was stretched, covering everything. And I remember lying awake, doing the same calculation, not because anything was wrong yet, but because I knew we were one bad month away from it being wrong. That background hum of low-grade financial dread, it doesn't announce itself. It just quietly shapes everything. You stop taking risks. You stop asking for things. You make yourself smaller because the math requires it. I didn't fully understand how heavy it was until it wasn't there anymore. Now let's talk about what actually frees up when the mortgage is gone, because people get this wrong in both directions. Your housing payment doesn't go to zero. Property taxes, insurance, and maintenance still exist. On a $400,000 home, you're looking at roughly $850 a month in carrying costs with no mortgage. So your mandatory housing cost drops from around $2,800 to around $850, not to zero. That frees up roughly $2,000 a month in actual deployable money. Here's what $2,000 a month into a basic index fund does over time. In 5 years, $148,000. In 10 years, around $360,000. In 15, $680,000. In 20 years, over $1.1 million. You put in $480,000 of your own money. The market added $650,000 on top of that. More than you contributed yourself. The majority of the wealth came from compound interest, not from working harder. Now, I know what some of you are already thinking. If your rate is below 5%, the math says investing beats paying off early. That argument is real. Historical data backs it up. At a 3% rate, excess payments invested in equities would have outperformed early payoff in most 30-year windows going back decades. But here's what that spreadsheet assumes. It assumes you actually invest the difference. Most households don't. The freed up cash becomes better dinners and streaming upgrades within 18 months. The forced payment was the only savings mechanism working, and once it's gone, the discipline has to come from somewhere else. The spreadsheet also assumes you can emotionally handle watching your investment portfolio drop 40% in a market crash while you still owe $2,500 a month on the house. That's a completely different psychological experience than watching the same drop from a home you own outright. One scenario is uncomfortable. The other is the scenario that makes people sell at the bottom. At rates above 7%, which covers most people who bought since 2022, aggressive payoff becomes a competitive guaranteed return. Between 4.5 and 7, it's a genuine judgment call. Below 4.5, invest the difference, but only if you actually will. The real answer isn't a rate, it's knowing yourself. Here's what makes this more than a financial calculation. Research on debt elimination, not reduction elimination, found that anxiety dropped measurably when people closed debt accounts entirely. Not just felt better, measurably performed better on cognitive assessments, made less impulsive decisions, were more able to hold out for long-term outcomes. And the part that stopped me, the number of accounts closed mattered more than the dollar amount. Closing a $3,000 credit card produced more psychological improvement than partially paying down $5,000 in debt. The brain doesn't care about the dollar amount. It cares about the open tab. For most people who've worked through credit cards, car loans, and student debt, the mortgage is the last open tab. When it closes, the noise stops. You didn't know it was that loud until it wasn't there. Carrying high debt relative to assets also correlates with higher blood pressure and higher rates of depression, independent of income level. This isn't a metaphor. The mortgage is a physiological load, not just a financial one. Your body has been carrying it. Here's where it gets interesting. And this is the part most people never run the numbers on. When a mortgage payment disappears, let's say a couple aggressively paid off at year 22 instead of 30, which is absolutely achievable, their monthly expense floor drops by $2,000. In financial independence math, you need roughly 25 times your annual expenses to be free. Eliminating $24,000 a year in mandatory costs reduces their independence number by $600,000. They didn't earn more. No promotion, no business. They just changed what survival costs. And that number determines everything. When your monthly survival requires 2 full-time incomes at full capacity, neither person can afford to leave a job they hate. Take a pay cut for meaningful work. Start something that needs 18 months to get profitable. Ask for a schedule that doesn't slowly destroy their health. Every option that involves risk gets killed by the same math. For many households, the mortgage functions like a 30-year employment contract, one most people didn't fully realize they were signing when they initialed the paperwork. Historical data backs this up. Leveraged homeownership, meaning carrying a mortgage, measurably reduces entrepreneurship. The effect is strongest when loan-to-value ratios are highest. Every dollar locked into a mandatory monthly payment is a dollar that cannot absorb risk anywhere else. So what does their life look like at year 22? Mortgage gone. She stops filtering every career conversation through whether the job is stable enough to cover the payment. She takes the role with more meaning and slightly less salary because they can absorb the difference now. He starts the contracting business he's been talking about since 2021 because one bad quarter no longer puts the house at risk. Their income didn't change. Their decisions changed completely because the math changed completely. Let me give you the real number, not the fantasy version. The house isn't free once the mortgage is gone. Property taxes have risen nearly 27% over the past several years nationally. If you're in a high-tax state, you might be paying over $700 a month on a median home mortgage or not. Homeowners insurance has jumped over 50% since 2020, and the 1% annual maintenance rule still applies on a $400,000 home that's $330 a month for the water heater that will absolutely break at 11 p.m. on a holiday. Your mandatory housing cost drops from around $2,800 to around $850, not to zero. Plan for the real number because the gap between what you expected and what you actually have is exactly the size of a surprise tax bill that will derail you if you weren't ready for it. Let's talk about who actually gets here. About 40% of owner-occupied homes in the U.S. are now mortgage-free, an all-time high. Sounds encouraging. Then you look at the ages. Over 60% of homeowners 65 and older are mortgage-free. Fewer than 28% of working-age homeowners are. The average payoff age is somewhere between 58 and 63. Meanwhile, the median first-time buyer just turned 36. A 30-year mortgage from 36 ends at 66, 3 years into what used to be called retirement. In 1989, about 3% of homeowners over 80 still had a mortgage. Today, it's nearly a third. The share of people 65 to 79 still carrying mortgages has nearly doubled in 30 years. Median mortgage debt among seniors is up 400%. We are carrying housing debt into retirement at a scale that has never happened in American history. And we're doing it quietly like it's just the new normal. It is not normal. It is not fine. Only 23% of Americans are completely debt-free. No mortgage, no car note, nothing. Which means getting there is genuinely rare. And the people who do, they consistently report the same thing. Not just relief, a kind of quiet they didn't know was missing. So how do you actually accelerate this? On a $450,000 mortgage at 6.5%, your standard payment is around $2,844 a month. Total interest over 30 years, $573,000. You pay more in interest than the house originally cost. Sit with that. Bi-weekly payments, splitting your monthly payment in half and paying every 2 weeks, results in 13 full payments per year instead of 12. That one change with zero lifestyle cost cuts 5 to 6 years off the loan and eliminates roughly $119,000 in interest. Throwing an extra $500 a month at principal shortens the timeline by about 8 years and kills $150,000 in interest. An extra $1,000 a month nearly cuts the loan term in half, paid off in 17 years instead of 30. None of these are heroic sacrifices. They're the difference between paying off your house at 55 versus 63. And the life you get at 55 with no mortgage is categorically different from waiting it out at 63. When the day finally comes, here's what you actually do. First, verify your lender filed the lien release and you received your deed. Least exciting sentence in this video. Also the most important one to follow through on: lenders sometimes just don't file it. You find out 3 years later when you try to sell and discover you don't legally own what you've been paying for. Second, before you redirect a single dollar, rebuild your emergency fund. You've been house poor for years. Get 6 to 12 months of your new lower expenses into liquid savings first. Then deploy the former payment, and yes, some households will need a home repair fund or family buffer before they max everything, so adjust this to your actual situation. But as a general framework, max your 401k match first. That's a guaranteed 50 to 100% return, and nothing else on this list comes close. Max your Roth IRA. If you're eligible, $7,000 a year in contributions grow completely tax-free. Max your 401k contribution limit, $23,500. Fund an HSA if you qualify. Then pour everything remaining into a taxable brokerage with low-cost index funds. $2,000 a month through all of these, at 8%, $365,000 in 10 years, over $1 million in 20. Not because you did anything clever, because you got the bank out of the way and finally gave compound interest the room it needed. Here's what I actually want you to take from this. The mortgage wasn't just a large bill. It was a permission slip you had to silently check every time you wanted to do something different. Want to leave a job you hate? Check the mortgage. Want to start something risky? Check the mortgage. Want to take a pay cut for work that actually matters? You can't. The mortgage. For most people, for most of their adult lives, the mortgage is the invisible hand shaping nearly every major decision they make. Not the only hand, but the one with the tightest grip. When it's gone, the grip releases. That's what changes. Not the net worth number, though. That comes eventually. The decisions change first. The options open. For the first time in decades, you get to make a choice based on what you actually want, not what the payment requires. That Sunday night math you've been running in the dark, you're not going to run it forever. Often, the people who stop running it the earliest aren't the ones who made the most, but the ones who treated the finish line like a real goal and ran toward it on purpose.